Okay, everybody. There's just one last thing here that I wanted to show everyone before we kind of wrap up the trigonometry unit and try some problem solving and maybe some more like just you've learned the core math for trigonometry. You've done the sine ratio, you've done the cosine ratio and tangent. You've done a lot of examples, and now we're going to move into more problem solving. And you have all the skills that you need. It's just there's one trick I wanted to show you. You see, we've looked at sine independently on its own, cosine on its own, and tangent. Well, the only thing that we haven't looked at is how do you know which one to use and when? That's probably the biggest problem. I mean, if I put a triangle in front of you right now and say figure out a side, well, which of these three ratios do you use? How would you figure that out? It almost doesn't make any sense. There is a trick that you can use, and it's called SOHCAHTOA. And I was taught this, I believe, in grade 9, and it's still taught to this day, and it really helps everyone understand which ratio they should be using. So what I'm going to do is explain that to you quickly here and then do some example problems. So the reason you use SOHCAHTOA is because it's a memory trick that allows you to figure out which of these you should be using. So basically, and I know I have this written down here, but here's how this works. SOHCAHTOA, what does it mean? So when I hear the word so, what you do essentially is the S stands for sine, and we know that always next you put the angle symbol. Put an equal sign. What two sides are associated with sine? It's so. O and H. The O goes on top, the H goes on the bottom. Remember, it was sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And I know I'm just copying what I have, but I'm just trying to show you the thought process that I have. The next part is ka. You pronounce it ka. So the C represents cos. Then we always put the angle symbol. Put an equal sign. Now, which two sides make up cosine? Well, that's the A and the H. The A goes on top, the H goes on the bottom. Okay? Finally, we're at TOA, so SOHCAHTOA. The T stands for tan, and you put the angle symbol, equals, it's what over what? So TOA is OA, so O goes on top, A goes on the bottom. Now again, you're kind of thinking, well, who cares? But the point is, this is going to help you understand really well which ratio you have to use when. So what I'm going to do is let's go over and try an example. And let's say I want you to find a side. Okay, and I'm just going to put this here. So I'm going to put, let's say, I'm going to put this as 35. I'm going to put an X right there. I'm going to put this as 18. So you're thinking to yourself right now, okay, he wants me to find that X. Well, how the heck do I do this? What do I do? The first step, as always, is to name your sides. Always name your sides. Okay, so let's do that. So if you name your sides, and I'm not going to review how to do this because you should know it by now. This is your hypotenuse. This is your opposite. This is your adjacent. Now, 2 check marks. For now, this step is going to help you out. 2 check marks. You're going to put a check mark. One of the check marks is for what you're looking for. So I'm just going to change this to red. So what are you looking for? You're looking for the X value. Now, of the other 2 sides, which one are you going to use to help you? If you look at the adjacent, there's no information given to you there at all. So we're not going to use that. So of the adjacent and the hypotenuse, which side gives you information? And of course, that's this one. So now you can see I've put a check mark here and a check mark here. I put a check mark on the opposite, and I put a check mark on the hypotenuse. So now you think to yourself, now I'm going to put this in red, think of SOHCAHTOA. Now, which of those ratios uses the O side and the H side? And of course, in this case, it's so, or sine. So that tells you to write down the basic formula for sine. So you go sine of the angle is O over H. Okay, fill it in. Sine reference angle is 35 equals x over 18. I'll get on the calculator here, which has to be in degrees, and I'll tell you what that is. Again, I don't really want to go over the calculations here, so we covered this a million times in previous lessons. The answer you should get is 10.32. Now, I'm not so much focused here on the math. I mean, yes, you got to know how to do that. But my point is here, do you see the procedure we went through to figure out which trigonometry ratio we had to use? In this case, I had to use sine because my check marks were put on the opposite and the hypotenuse. Let's try another one. I'll go back to the black color here. Okay, so let's draw it like this. Okay. We'll put the angle right here. We'll put 30. Let's put this one as 10, and let's put our x right here. So number one is you name sides. That's never going to change. Name your sides. So I'll do that right now. O goes there, A goes there. Now, number two is the two check marks. So if you follow my reasoning, you take the two check marks, and what you do is you put one on the side you're trying to find. Well, you can see I put an X right here. So we want to find our hypotenuse side. And which of the other two sides gives you information that you can use? The opposite has nothing, but the adjacent does have something. So the two sides we're going to use are going to be A and H. Now you look at SOHCAHTOA. So which of those three uses A and H? It's pretty obvious, it's this one. So that tells you, it triggers your mind to use the cosine formula or ratio. This is what it looks like. We've done it all so many times. It's A over H. Fill in your formula. Cosine 30 equals, we have an adjacent value over x. Again, I'm not getting into the math right now because you should know how to calculate this at this point in time. This is where you go 10 divided by cos 30, hopefully, and I think you should know that. Oh, I made a mistake here on my calculator. 10 divided by cosine 30, cosine 30, that gives me a value of 11.55, give or take. Okay, so are you seeing here how I had to use the two check marks? One check mark went onto the side that I need to find. One check mark went onto the side that gives me information. And that helps me figure out, do I use SO, CA, or TOA? Of course, it was the CA part, which represents the cosine ratio. Finally, this can be used to find angles as well. Let's just say here I'll draw as a triangle. And in this case, we want to find this angle right here. And let's pretend that I give you, I'm going to give you this side as 17 and this side as 22. So number one here is name sides. So we'll name the sides. Okay, so I'll do that right now. Hypotenuse, this is our reference angle, opposite from our reference angle. This is your adjacent. Number two is the two check marks. Now, I know we're finding an angle, but nothing really has changed. The only thing though is, the only maybe minor difference is, which two sides are we going to use to help us find our angle? We must have two sides. So I'm going to put that in English here. Which two sides help us find the angle? Well, which two sides here give you information, everybody? There's only two of them, and it's pretty straightforward. In this case, we have information on the opposite side, and we have information on the adjacent side. So we're going to use both of those to help us find the angle. Number three, look at SOHCAHTOA. Okay, So which of our ratios, which of our memory tricks uses O and A? Well, that's going to be the TOA, which represents tan. So go tan of your angle is O over A. Fill it out. Tan, this is what we're finding. Tan is opposite over adjacent, which is 17 over 22. Remember, this is where you have to hit the inverse. Again, you should know how to do this calculation, but I'll just figure out the answer here really quick. That gives me a value of 37.7 degrees, give or take. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say we want this angle right here. I'm going to give you this side as 150, and I'll give you this side as 225. So nothing really has changed. You're going to name your sides. So name your sides. This is your hypotenuse, this is your opposite, and this is your adjacent. Number 2 is the 2 check mark trick. So now in this case, which 2 sides are we going to use to help us solve our angle? Well, we only have info for 2 sides. That's the A and the H. Number 3, SOHCAHTOA. And let's figure out which one uses the 2 sides we checked off, which is A and H. That's the Ka part, which represents cosine. So write down your formula. And now you can input into that, So that's going to be cosine, this is your missing angle, is 150, which is adjacent over your hypotenuse. And I will figure out your answer here. So this is going to be inverse cosine 150 divided by 225 gives you an answer of 48.2 degrees, give or take. End of the day, everyone, here, the whole point is knowing how to use SOHCAHTOA appropriately and properly to solve a triangle problem. You see, we spent time working on sine, we spent time working on cosine, and we spent time working on tan. And the point is, when they're all by themselves, it's really easy. You could solve questions all you want. The next step in this, of course, is saying, okay, you have the skills, solve a triangle. You got to figure out which trigonometry ratio you can use to help you solve a triangle. So I hope this lesson has made sense. I'm going to give you some practice with this now. Please try to follow the steps that I've used and rewatch this video if necessary.